Hi, and welcome to Historical Influence.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're pushing past that classic image of, just chaos and conquest on horseback.
Right.
We want to understand something far more complex. The actual foundations of the Mongol Empire.
The machinery behind it all.
Exactly. Our mission for this deep dive is to really extract the key mechanisms Genghis Khan used not just to conquer, but to build and institutionalize the largest continuous land empire in history.
And we're going to be looking at some surprising sources, like the secret history of Mongols and the Great Yasa to get there.
We'll touch on everything from their nomadic roots to this incredible postal system they developed. So to really get this, we have to start with the world that created these people, the environment.
We have to. The whole story plays out on the Central Asian steppe, and you have to understand, this is not some flat, easy grassland.
Right.
We are talking about a massive high plateau averaging 3,000 feet above sea level. The climate there is the first and most relentless enemy.
Okay, so let's unpack that. It sounds absolutely brutal. Sharp temperature swings, sudden snow, high winds. How does the whole way of life evolve just to survive that?
Well, survival was entirely dependent on mobility, on efficiency. Their whole economy was based on herding these 5 key animals: cattle, sheep, goats, camels, and of course the horse. The horse was everything.
And their homes had to reflect that, right? The jur, or what most of us call a yurt.
It's an ingenious piece of portable architecture, a felt-covered circular wooden frame. It's expertly designed to be taken apart easily, light enough to move, but still sturdy enough to handle those insane steppe winds.
And some of them were just huge, weren't they? They were moving entire homes.
Precisely. We have contemporary accounts that talk about the largest stirs being so immense they needed special carts pulled by 20 oxen just to move them.
20 oxen.
This constant need for portability dictates everything. Their material culture, which is why the archaeological evidence is so scarce, and even their political structure.
And before Genghis Khan, that structure was, let's say, fractured. It was a world of really bitter internal fighting.
Oh, it was a cauldron of tribal warfare, just driven by generations of blood feuds. You had 4 main groups: the Great Mongols, the Tatars, who were sometimes called the Su-Mongol or Water Mongols, the Merkit, and the Mekrit.
They all spoke the same language, but they were not friends.
Not at all. Shared language, but separate rulers, all constantly maneuvering for an edge.
And the violence, even between family lines, was extreme. I mean, the enmity that really fuels Temüjin's rise was set by this one incredibly public, brutal execution.
It was a horrifying precedent. Temüjin's own ancestor, Genghis Khan, and his cousin were captured by the Tatars.
Okay.
But the Tatars didn't just kill them, they delivered them to the powerful Jin emperor, who then executed them by nailing them to a wooden donkey.
Wow. So it's not just murder, it's a ritual humiliation.
Exactly. It establishes this deep tribal need for vengeance that Temüjin inherits. Unification becomes as much about settling old scores as it is about building a nation.
So let's talk about that man Temüjin, who would become Genghis Khan. His origin story, straight from the secret history of the Mongols, is pure drama.
It is. His very conception starts with a conflict. His mother, Ogalun Ujin, was taken by his father, Yasuge, while Yasuge was out hunting.
And his birth itself was seen as this great prophecy.
Yes. The secret history is very specific. It says he was born clutching a clot of blood the size of an ankle bone in his right hand.
An undeniable sign.
An undeniable sign of a great warrior. He was even named Temüjin because his birth happened right as his father captured a Tatar leader with that same name. And the name itself means iron, or man of iron will.
But then his father dies, and his whole world just collapses. The largest tribe, the Teches, they just abandoned his mother and her sons. So how does this kid, essentially an outcast, build a force that will eventually conquer China?
He engineers a complete political revolution. He shifts the entire basis of power from the old feuding clan loyalty to something new. Intense, unshakable personal loyalty.
And this is where the nukers come in.
This is the core. His companions, the nukers.
These were the bedrock of his entire empire, his first warriors.
Absolutely. Men like Borchu and Zelme, they weren't just soldiers. They were family by choice. They proved their loyalty over and over. He famously said they were so vital, they replaced his own shadow and his horse's tail as his only true companions.
That's incredible.
And that personal bond becomes the template for the entire state he's about to build.
So that foundation of just fierce loyalty, that leads right to the core innovation of the empire, this military administrative reform in 1206. It basically turns the entire nation into one giant, disciplined army.
Exactly. The moment he's proclaimed Genghis Khan, he structures the whole society into this decimal system. Tens, hundreds, thousands, and then the huge tumult of 10,000.
But the revolutionary part wasn't just the numbers, was it?
No, the real genius was the social engineering. He deliberately mixed up the traditional tribal lineages inside these new units.
And why was scrambling the tribes so important?
Because it just dissolved the old power structure overnight. If your unit of 1,000 men is made up of some Tatars, some Merkits, some great Mongols, you can't plot against the Khan along your old tribal lines. It completely eliminated the power of local leaders and bound every single soldier directly to him.
He also forbade transfers, right?
Strictly. Once you were in a unit, you were there for life. You were bound to the Khan's service.
Which brings us to that final, brutal policy after he defeated the Tatars. Was that just revenge, or was it the final piece of this administrative puzzle?
It was the final elimination of that cycle of vengeance. The mandate was to execute all Tatar males taller than a cart axle pin.
Taller than a cart axle pin.
The brutal specificity is key. It wasn't just random slaughter. It effectively selected only males old enough to bear arms and, crucially, old enough to remember the humiliation of Aga Khan. By wiping out the entire male generation that could carry on the blood feud, he made sure that instability could never come from them again.
But none of this administrative genius would matter without the military force to back it up. So let's shift to that. The military machine. How did this restructured nation actually fight and conquer land from Hungary to Manchuria?
Well, the foundation was a complete commitment to cavalry and just an unwavering iron discipline. The entire army was horseback archers. Speed, maneuverability, and discipline was enforced with the threat of immediate death.
Instant obedience.
Instant and exact. No delay, and importantly, no anticipating orders. You waited for the command and you executed it. Period.
And their training. The most unique part wasn't a barracks or a field, it was the annual hunt.
The Levitha. This massive organized drive hunt was mandatory military training disguised as a sport. It was a gigantic simulation of battle.
So not just for food.
Oh, not at all. The men practiced everything: formations, coordinating thousands of riders over huge distances, endurance and reconnaissance, scouting the number and type of game as if they were enemy soldiers. It was the perfect rehearsal for continental warfare.
And this disciplined force gets unleashed, often because of political incidents. The war with the Khorram Shahs is a perfect example of how a diplomatic slight could trigger a world-altering campaign.
That campaign was immense, and it was sparked by a profound violation of trust. The governor in Utrar seized and executed a 500-person caravan.
A trade caravan.
Yes, and it included 4 Muslim merchants who were operating under the Khan's personal protection. For Genghis Khan, this was an unacceptable offense against his free trade ambitions and his honor. The response was absolute devastation.
And once they started fighting these settled empires, they had to adapt. You can't just ride around the great walled cities of Persia.
And that's where their innovation comes in. The Mongols were expert assimilators. Once they conquered places like northern China, they just employed the captured Chinese siege engineers.
So they brought the tech with them.
They brought their immense technological advantage right into the Mongol army. We're talking advanced catapults, ballistic for stone throwing, primitive cannons, even flamethrowers. This transformed them from pure cavalry into a force that could breach any wall.
But the memory that lasts from those campaigns is the psychological warfare. The deliberate devastation meant to break anyone's will to resist.
The conquest of cities like Bukhara and Samarkand was horrific, and a lot of it was calculated terror. We have specific accounts from Bukhara where the main mosque was deliberately used as a horse stable, and chests with the Quran were used as mangers.
A deliberate, shocking display of contempt.
An act of cultural dominance, but amid all that brutality, they were highly selective about who they killed.
Right, they weren't just destroying everything.
Absolutely not. While most male citizens might be executed, vital artisans and technicians were always spared. From Samarkand alone, some 30,000 artisans were taken as slaves. Their skills were integrated into the empire.
And this terrifying technologically advanced force just kept pushing west, right into Europe with Batu and Subutai. They took Ryazan, Moscow.
And pushed all the way into Poland, Hungary, even Dalmatia. And they only stopped because the great Khan, Urgide, died.
A crucial detail. They weren't defeated, they were called back by protocol.
Precisely. The Khan's descendants had to return for the election of a new leader.
Okay, so now we have to shift from military might to organization. And this is the hardest question. How did a nomadic culture maintain order, and more importantly, communication, across such a mind-bogglingly huge area?
The institutional answer, the real scaffolding of the empire, was the Great Yasa, the law code.
The Yasa.
It codified their customary nomadic law, but it was heavily influenced by Genghis Khan's personal views, and it was meant to be followed religiously, even though its contents were often kept secret, which just added to its mystique.
It sounds like it was a document of extreme contrasts. Death penalties for minor things, next to some surprisingly enlightened ideas.
That contrast is the key. On one hand, the Yasa mandated absolute religious tolerance. It also granted tax exemptions to doctors, fakirs, men of science, anyone devoted to prayer. They valued utility. They valued knowledge.
But on the other hand, death for adultery, for hiding a foreign slave, and even for things like washing clothes or bathing in running water during a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
Why elevate a cultural taboo about water to a capital offense?
Well, that rule shows the pragmatic genius of the Yasa. In the arid steppe, clean water is life itself. Contaminating a shared water source could lead to disease, ecological collapse. By making it a capital crime, Genghis Khan turned a nomadic taboo into state law that was essential for public health and resource management.
And economically, since they weren't building huge monuments like the Romans, where did all the wealth and power go?
It resided in flow, in exchange. The empire created what was, for its time, the largest unified free trade zone the world had ever seen. This just fostered explosive cultural exchange, a diversity of textiles, engineering ideas spreading everywhere. Wealth wasn't a pile of gold in a vault. It was the systematic movement of people and goods.
And that massive trade zone requires a revolutionary communication system. Tell me about the Yam.
The Yam postal system, which was formalized under Uday, was the organized backbone of information across Eurasia. It was the 13th century internet.
A courier service on steroids.
Pretty much. Couriers carried a passport plate, a paisa, and this plate was their ticket to power. It gave them the right to an immediate horse replacement at any post station, or Yam.
So how fast was this, really?
Incredibly fast. A messenger with a paisa could cover 200 to 300 kilometers in a single day.
That's insane.
This speed allowed the Khan in the capital to govern vast distances with an efficiency that was unheard of. And that system later became the origin of the Russian Yamskaya Gomba postal system.
We should also touch on the paradox of their capital, Karakorum. If they valued mobility so much, why build a fixed capital at all?
Karakorum was an attempt to transition from a war camp to a stable administrative center. It had significant urban planning, even an artificial silver tree. But you hit on the paradox. Its fixed nature ultimately went against their core philosophy.
It didn't last.
It was important for a few decades, a real nexus of trade and diplomacy. But it was eventually abandoned when Kublai Khan moved the center of power to the much more urban Beijing, or Khanvali.
Let's move to Genghis Khan's final years, the succession. Why did he choose Ogedei as Great Khan over his other, more martial sons?
Because he understood that the skills you need to build an empire are different from the skills you need to maintain one.
Ah.
He chose Ogedei precisely because he was friendly, he understood people, and he valued good governance. He saw those as essential for managing a diverse continental state. He felt his other sons were too focused on trivial things, like hunting.
But the youngest son, Tului, he still inherited most of the army. That seems counterintuitive.
That reflects a Mongol custom. The youngest son is the keeper of the hearth, the one who protects the homeland and its assets. So Tului got the largest share of the troops, 101,000 out of 129,000, even though he wasn't the supreme leader. The army was with him, but the mandate to govern was with Ogedei.
And Genghis Khan's death was defined by this commitment to secrecy, a deliberate avoidance of grand monuments.
The custom was clear. No burial of treasure, no grand tombs that could be looted. To ensure the grave's secrecy, likely near the sacred mountain Burkhan Khaldun, everyone the funeral procession encountered was killed.
They literally took the secret to their graves.
Exactly.
And the empire he built fractured, but the foundations remained, leading to these four main successor states.
The Uluses, yes. You had Jochi's line forming the Golden Horde, Chagatai in Central Asia, Ogedei's line holding the title of Great Khan, and Hulagu forming the Ilkhans in Iran. They fought, but they were all still operating on the basis of the Yasa and the systems he created.
So the final legacy beyond the conquest is really one of a unified global structure that changed Eurasia forever.
Absolutely. The enduring impact wasn't architecture, it was the unified trade and communication systems that fundamentally changed how continents interacted. They built the infrastructure for the early modern world. And the impact is, well, it's literally in the DNA. Y chromosome data shows a widespread genetic footprint across Europe and Asia,
A massive, undeniable genetic legacy.
rooted in the mobility and conquest of the Mongol forces.
Okay, let's unpack this. So what does this all mean for you? The Mongol Empire was founded on relentless military discipline, yes, but it was stabilized by a surprisingly sophisticated, if harsh, administrative state. It was defined by the Yasa, by enforced religious tolerance, and the incredible efficiency of the YAM system. They weren't just destroyers, they were system builders.
Which leaves you with an important question to think about. When Genghis Khan was choosing his successor, he assessed his son's definitions of happiness. Jochi and Tului valued horse herds and hunting. Chagatai valued defeating enemies and bringing back spoil. But Ugadei valued governing well and ensuring the tranquility of the state. So, based on the evidence, which of those visions proved most critical to the empire's longevity? Was it military might, or was it civil administration that provided the stronger long-term foundation?
Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that shaped our world.